Moscow City regular council meeting. There we go. Now we got some sound in here. And I will open this meeting up, and we will start. Walter, would you please lead us, sir?
Would you join the mayor and council in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Walter. Okay, we will go right on and talk about the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Okay.
All second.
Okay, we got a motion by Dan and a second by John to approve the consent agenda as such. I'll start the roll with Walter.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Okay. That was quick, so we'll move on to the next thing, which is staff recognition report, which Gary does not have one tonight. Correct? Okay, so we'll move on to item number 3, which is mayor's appointments. And I'll read the names off, and when I'm done reading the names off, I'd like to ask the folks that are here that are on these commissions to please stand so we can see who they are. Marcy Miller, Farmers Market Commission. This is the produce seat that expires on 12/31 of 2017. Emily, if you're with me, I hope I don't butcher this name because I believe it is Aizawa, Emily Aizawa, Human Rights Commission. That's a college seat. Did I pronounce that right?
Pretty good, Aizawa.
Okay, thank you very much. And that expires 12/31 of 2015. Amberly Beckman, Human Rights Commission, which expires 12/31/2016. Rob Parrish, Planning and Zoning Commission, which expires 12/31 of 2015. And Brendan Jackson, Sustainable Environment Commission, which expires 12/31/2016.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move that we approve the slate of nominees.
Second that.
Okay, Dan made the motion to approve with Wayne's second. I'll start the roll with John.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Would all of you stand up for just a minute, please, so everybody in the room could get a chance? Give you a round of applause. I, as the mayor, as well as councilors up here, all of us have served on various commissions, and we are so happy that you folks come out and join us and put in your time and your efforts. We really appreciate it. It's a big deal for our community. We're glad to have you aboard, so thank you very much. If any of you would like to say something to us or address the council, you may come to the podium and tell us your name and do it. You don't have to, but if you'd like, you're welcome to. Okay, thank you very much.
No prepared speeches.
Okay. Okay. We'll move on to item number 4, which is public comment, mayor's response period for 15 minutes. Anybody can address, members of the public can address us and speak in front of the council as long as it's something that is not on the agenda tonight or in front of Planning and Zoning or the Board of Adjustments. If you'd like to speak, please come up and tell us your name and address. Okay, seeing none come forward, we'll go ahead and we will move on to item number 5, which is a resolution regarding electronic signatures and records retention. Rod Hall will present to us. Good evening, Rod.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. My presentation will be fairly short. If I can get the slideshow up, we'll get going. Actually, I don't have a slideshow, sorry.
Just a blank screen.
Just a blank screen. It's a blank slate. Tonight we're talking about a resolution regarding electronic signatures and record retention. Idaho Code allows governmental agencies to determine whether and to what extent it will allow electronic records and signatures to be used in the government business. With the convenience and low cost of conducting business over the Internet, it has potential to increase efficiencies in businesses, including government business. With the technological advances and increases in the number of people that use electronics in their businesses, that will only continue to increase. The benefits of allowing this is that you can reduce the amount of paper used, it will save time, and it will also reduce costs in that you won't have to have people handling the documents several times. This resolution before you tonight authorizes the city to develop policies for each city department as the need or practicality arises. Idaho's Uniform Electronic Transactions Act was enacted. It enacts the model legislation that was approved by the National Conference of Commissioners on the Uniform State Laws. It was designed to support the use of electronic commerce with a primary objective to establish the legal equivalence of electronic records and signatures with paper writings and written signatures and removing barriers to electronic commerce. When I was asked to first look at this, my first concern was, how far will this go? I mean, how will you be able to show that somebody intended to act? If you just allow them to online, you don't know for sure who it is. I think that the commission, when they looked at it a dozen years ago, that was one of their concerns in trying to make sure that they could attribute the signature to the person. But I think the technology or the cost associated with that was going to be too big that a lot of business probably wouldn't use it. So I think they went with the more simpler explanation to allow somebody to just basically put an X or push a button and say, well, this is my intent and this is my act, and therefore that is, I want to be bound by that agreement. And so if somebody ever questions whether this individual entered this particular transaction, they can look at all the circumstances surrounding it, like any emails or other conversations, other documents they have to prove that this person entered into this contract. It was their act and it was their intent. So basically, the law states is that when you push it, it's basically your electronic X when you put it on the document.
Okay, Rod, this was reviewed by the Administrative Committee last Monday and recommended for approval with one change. Dan, would you like to explain that maybe?
I don't remember what change we made, Rod.
It was just changed one word. I talked to Councilor Steed in the resolution on number 3H. We just clarified it and just changed a couple of words and I think added in the word that.
Scriveners.
It was just a scrivener's correction, so it was just actually to make it flow a little more cleanly.
Yes, we did see this in front of the Administrative Committee and agreed that, the way business of today is going, and a lot more people are doing a lot more stuff online, and a lot of it had to do with, possibly with contracts with the city too, where, there's a lot of printing stuff out, then faxing it, then printing out again and scanning and faxing, that this is going to help alleviate a lot of paper work and work of paper. So with that, I would make a motion that we go ahead and approve this proposed resolution.
I would second that.
Okay, we got a motion by Dan and a second by Jim.
Question.
Question for Wayne?
Rod, just to clarify, any electronic signature is backed up by some type of electronic paper trail pertaining to each individual signature and each individual contract?
Well, for it to be valid, whatever part of the policy is that the final document has to be printed to be able to make it a hard copy. Both ends have to be able to print a hard copy of the final document.
So if the mayor were to look at a document that had his electronic signature on it, and he would say, well, I don't really remember why I signed that, or having signed it, there would be some backup material that would show that there was intent to do so.
Yeah, I'm sure it would probably be minutes in a meeting, any other indicia of showing what the intent was.
Not that you would forget.
These things happen from time to time.
There's a steel trap up there.
Okay, other questions for Rod from councilors? Okay, we got the motion by Dan, a second by Jim to approve the proposed resolution. John, we'll start the roll with you.
Aye.
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 And aye.
Okay, it's fine to zip, so we will move on to item number 6, which is Moscow's Farmers Market report by Kathleen Burns. Good evening, Kathleen. How are you?
Good. So I just wanted to speak about the electronic signatures. We're currently doing electronic signatures with the federal government with the AmeriCorps contracts. So I just signed off on Amanda's hours today. They go down to Pocatello and they get recorded. And that's through the federal government. So just an FYI.
In relationship to farmers market?
Her hours of work. Yep.
All right.
Yep. So, it's not on. Okay.
There we go.
Button on the right.
Yeah. On the left. So I copied the report for, in your packet, and tonight I'm going to present on the first part of the report, not on the matrix, the numbers. Just if you have questions about those ending numbers, we can talk about it, but I wanted to get to the meat of the report. So, there you go. I always lift the partnerships and some of the sponsorships that we have with the market. I don't think we should forget that a lot of people on this page help us out greatly with the market. New St. Andrews just opening up their facility for restrooms. The Chamber of Commerce for answering questions. This year with the HEAL grant, we had volunteers from a dietitian, Nancy Cure from Gritman Medical Center, to teach healthy nutrition classes, and then also Marissa Rudley through the University of Idaho, and they both volunteered. The U of I Extension participated and volunteered. The Moscow Pullman Daily News posts all of our activities at the market every single week in the paper and also online. And then also Inland Northwest Broadcasting does a lot of free PR for us, as well as downtown businesses. They're very supportive of the market now, and we've had really good reception from downtown businesses. The Farmers Market Commission puts in a lot of hours with the market. And then these 3 radio stations, KRFP, Northwest Public Radio, KUOI, they all cover the market live. And then we also have a contract with Backyard Harvest, and then our AmeriCorps contract. So this is the participation of people within the city and then people in our community that participate in the market. You can see we booked 28 paid musicians, 21 non-paid musicians. We booked Festival of Dance, non-paid. We did the volunteer coordination for voting for the favorite farmers market. We did the poster contest, the canning demos with the canning grant. We participated in the HEAL grant with the High Five Passport program. Amanda Argona coordinated the feed study, which was another component to study the market. And the engineering department participated. Just Kevin and Scott Bontrager set up their storyboards on construction and road crews for the summer to educate the public. And then various commissions in the city talked about what they do in their individual commissions. The Moscow Parks and Rec, under the direction of Eric Newell, did his Pride Ride and Bike Fest at the market. Then we also had the University of Idaho Extension Master Gardeners. We had Latah County Human Rights Day. This year, the American Legion participated with Flag Day, and they demonstrated to the public the care and handling of flags. We did a presentation of the flags, and they answered questions on flag care and Flag Day at their booth. We also had Idaho Fish and Migratory Bird Day. We had the Great Moscow Food Drive, which supports all these local food banks. And then the police department also did their drug take-back program at the market. So we had a lot of community partnerships in the market. So some of the improvements this year, we received the Ball Canning Grant for the 2nd year in a row. We began the High Five Passport program with the HEAL grant. We developed the Over the Street banners under Walter Steed's initiative. We purchased more picnic tables and umbrellas per citizen surveys, wanting more places to sit and shade. We went from a part-time AmeriCorps position to a full-time AmeriCorps position. We ran the policy and procedures through the legal department, compliments of Rod. We really developed the Manage My Market software system as far as our participation. And then the Farmers Market Commission really picked up speed this year in their participation. Also, the Chamber of Commerce and the Water Department developed the Zip to Water program, so we had additional water for participants and the crowds downtown. We developed the Vendor of the Week promotion, and then there's Lucas with his pilot beer and wine sales at the market. And again, we were voted 4th year in a row, #1 farmers market in the state of Idaho by American Farmland Trust. So you've had a report on the canning grant. This just goes back over all the different items that we distributed, all the different prizes that we distributed, and the value to all of the product, $2,256 worth of product, and about $1,850 worth of prize money. So that was really successful again this year. Marketing, this is DJ's forte, does a lot of marketing for the department, and this is the dollar amount that we spent collectively on marketing. The big cost this year, of course, was the over-the-street banners.
Which were terrific.
Yeah. We got a lot of people that came into the market that did not know they were in Moscow, Idaho, and did not know about our farmers market. They were just traveling through and saw the signs and pulled over.
Kathleen, and I don't want to interrupt your presentation, but I just want to comment even further on that because those were so effective. I had, I don't know how many comments from citizens as well as people that are just passing through town, and it was pretty neat to have this. We opened them up and then took them down afterwards. It was a real impact, I believe, for the market.
I think you're right. It drew a lot of people to the market that might not have participated before. So that was a real bonus. This is our social media page. People wonder how we advertise at the market online. These are the different media outlets that we use. Some of them might be familiar to you, maybe they won't be, but we are on TripAdvisor. We're on Visit Idaho, farmersmarket.com, Soilmate, a variety of different social media outlets. We started the Facebook back in 2011 with 50 fans, and as of January 20th, we had 2,284 fans. We post weekly events. We post all winter long to the Facebook site, and now our farmers are posting, and participants, vendors in the market post. So we find out different things that are happening, what vendors are doing right now. We have a lot of Twitter followers, thanks to Barry, and he's pretty good at doing the tweets on Saturday. So the Manage My Market software has been an $800 purchase and then a maintenance fee by IS every year. And this is like our repository of information. So this is where we upload all the applications, all the surveys, all the hold harmless forms that people sign to participate in the market, food risk assessment forms, any tax forms, 135 ST-124s, for example, are uploaded. And this is just how we track the volume of people coming into the market and who's missing what form and who might need to upload something. So it's been a very good software program. We tried to work with the RecWare program that the Park and Rec Department had, but it didn't fit all the slots that we needed for the market. So this program was actually developed for farmers markets, and Boise uses this program as well as Liberty Lake and Spokane. So it's been a really good program. So these are your folks on the commission who have spent an awful lot of hours involved in the market this summer, whether it was on-site help with homecoming. My thoughts go out to Shirley Green because she really coordinated a lot of work and even had Dave Trail drive us with his pickup truck and our costumes. And a lot of folks helped out with the Healthy Active Living Project and the homecoming parade, as well as market juries serving as jurists. And then we also did our farm tours, and there was about 6 farm tours, and David Pierce is not here, but he participated on every farm tour, whether it was going down to Lewiston or up north above Potlatch on up to St. Mary's. So he was very helpful with that. And then we have several subcommittees for the commission: policy, agricultural, marketing, music, and craft. And those are hours that we really haven't tracked, those meetings. And Wayne was with us on a meeting on Friday for a policy subcommittee, so we have to start tracking those numbers as well. So I asked my market manager how much communication he does on an average week prior to market day, and he averages about 65 weekly texts, 80 to 85 emails to 40-plus vendors, averages 10 weekly phone calls, and that adds up to about 5 hours pre-market day, and then basically 9 hours on Saturday is pretty much communication with whether it's public or vendors. So I just wanted him to calculate his time on communication, because Barry is one of the reasons we're so successful with our market, because he's a very good communicator. And it's a very positive experience for people coming from out of town and coming in to vend at the market. So this is your Shop the Market program. Backyard Harvest is a $1,500 contract for the city to facilitate the EBT at the market. This year the numbers were down a little bit, a couple $100, but they did collect 535 pounds of produce that went to our local food banks, and then $14,000, $399 was paid out to our local farmers. So that's pretty important, a figure. So these are your vendor fee breakdowns, what vendors have paid to participate in the market. And you can see the difference between the seasoned vendors at $23,876.66, walk-on vendors at $14,650, and this is for a walk-on child vendor at $5, a music busker, an extra trailer, or a truck. These are all the fees at the market that we collect. So then this year was our first year to have mandatory sale reporting at the market. And you can see the difference between what 2013, where it was optional, and then 2014, where it was mandatory. And collectively, it was over $1 million that we had reported from 80% of our seasoned vendors. And they are still sending in their reports. But that's what we have to date as of last week. And we called the State Tax Commission, and the estimated revenue is 6% on that, which equates to about $61,962 in state tax.
Kathleen, if I may?
Yep.
Walter?
You said that in 2014, the vendors were required to report, but you only got 80% of them to do so?
Correct. Yep.
But if I remember right from your report,
Yep.
if they don't, we're not going to invite them back, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. Kathleen, so what kind of a time frame do you give them? Because the market opens up in May, so do you, like, 30 days before that, say, oh, by the way, we did not receive you
No,
2014, or is that?
Well, we did our initial letters back in November, and then we just reissued another letter in January
Telling them that? Okay.
for February 10th for
John had his
noncompliance.
John?
And we have a sufficient supply of vendors that would like to be in the market to pick up the slack from those who chose not to give us their sales figures?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
You need to be recognized. You
Yeah,
can't
come
just
on up,
speak from the
if
audience.
you'd like to come up to the podium so we know who you are. Just let us know your name and your address, sir, and who you are, and go ahead and
Already
contact.
know that?
Well, we do, but for the television
Bob
audience.
Hassel, Kendrick, Idaho.
Half of your revenue is coming from seasoned vendors, produce vendors. Okay? Do you have a sufficient number of produce vendors to take over those people that didn't report?
Most of the reporting, there's only one produce vendor that is non-compliance. Yeah. So we're not having a problem with produce vendors reporting. It's some other areas like craft and food, primarily.
Another question on the reporting. Are the walk-ons, the children that we see that are selling, I don't know, bracelets they made or whatever, are they under the same requirements for reporting?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a daily walk-on reporting, and you can see we broke it down between season and walk-on. So walk-on produce was $35,000, walk-on craft was $54,000.
So it applies to everyone?
Yes.
If they're there in the market and
Yep.
selling, they're asked to report?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions about this slide?
Go ahead and continue, Kathleen.
Okay.
Thank you.
So here's your financial recap of what the market costs to facilitate and orchestrate. So you have your revenue up at the top, and looks like we're 6,000 to the good from 13 to 14. And our staff expenses actually went down this year. We're getting a little more proficient on Main Street. And then some of our expenses, it appears that we went down from 15,000 to 12,000, but actually at the bottom of the indirect costs, I put the $1,500 contract for backyard harvest, and the contract 4,000 plus for the AmeriCorps. So I actually added them as an indirect cost instead of hiding those two costs up in the program expenses like last year. I just lined them all out. So then these are figures that we receive from different departments in the city expressing the hours and costs to their department. And so we calculate those costs out as well, which is roughly $13,814. A lot of these we couldn't work without them. For example, the fire department doing inspections on site on Saturday. Joe does a lot of inspections. The street department actually sweeps and puts in quite a few man hours in cleaning the street prior to Saturday. Park and Rec, there are garbage people that help us out, and Tom Grundon, and they're very, very important to us on Saturday. And then engineering services, Kerry, and he helps us out a lot with mapping, printing, various things. Tom's no longer in the audience, but they do maintain the drinking fountains and help us out with that. And then the police, that's a figure for impounds, towing, putting flyers on cars for parking, various tasks that they perform.
Mr. Mayor.
Walter?
Kathleen, on that slide, this may be a question, Gary, for you. Are the costs that are enumerated there under the city departments costs that would not be incurred except for farmers market? I guess the one that caught my eye was the street department sweeper hours and so forth. I mean, we sweep Main Street anyway, do we not? Is this an extra sweeping because the farmers market occurred, or are we moving some? It would happen no matter what onto the farmers market because the next morning is market day.
Yeah, I think it's done a little more frequently, but we try to keep Main Street as clean as possible.
I appreciate that, but my question is.
No, I understand. I suppose that you could say that some of those are going to be incurred anyway. I mean, there's some of those. The police, for instance, you're impounding and putting flyers on, so that's directly related. But I would say that's probably the best case Walter, is that some of those street sweeping expenses might be incurred anyway. And I could check with Tyler and see what those would be.
Well, I certainly agree with management's decision a couple of years ago to allocate costs to farmers market, to tell us what does this thing really cost us, as much as we're proud of it, as much as we're tickled to death with what it is and does. Knowing what it costs us is something we also would like to know. I was impressed when either Tyler or Kathleen, whoever gets the credit, came up with those screw-in-the-ground barricades for each end of Main Street, where people didn't have to be out there on overtime or on Saturday putting up barricades from the street department in order to block off the market. So I was expecting the street department's cost to drop dramatically when I don't see them out there on special trips doing things they wouldn't do otherwise. That was just the reason that question came to me.
Sure.
Well, I think Tyler gets the credit for putting the system in place, but I'd like to say me and my staff and I get credit for installation every Saturday and
every
removal.
Saturday.
Yeah, we're getting really good at that, I'd like to say. We're very proficient. So some of our costs have gone, if you get down to the bottom line, our costs have dropped quite a bit, even with the contracts and even with the AmeriCorps going up to full-time. So I just wanted to make sure that people were tracking years and the differences.
Walter?
Jim had his hand up, and then I've got a question.
Okay, Jim.
On 2013, Kathleen, there's no backyard harvest or AmeriCorps expense shown there. Was that someplace else? Was covered
Yep,
up?
they were grouped up in the MFM program expenses at 15,524. They were put in that group. And this year, in 14, I separated them out.
If that number was comparable to
Yep.
14, what would that number be if it was down on where there's no number now? Do you know how much that would be?
Well, backyard harvest every year is $1,500. And Manda Argona is about $4,400 for a full-time AmeriCorps employee.
But in 13, she was
Same-
half-time.
That was the same.
But in 13, she was half-time, so she was more like 2,300. I don't have it right in front of me. It was less.
So year over year, that would be different down low. But it's still included up at the top.
Yep. Yeah, we didn't forget them. Every year we do the contract with Backyard Harvest. Yep.
John?
Kathleen, you've got Moscow Farmers Market staff expenses 2014 of $37,707. How much of that is you?
About 18,000.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor?
Walter?
Kathleen, I can really appreciate you cutting your deficit by a third.
We're working on it, Walter.
Can you get to zero?
Not without another partnership or labor. We need some labor replacement on Saturdays, whether it's a volunteer crew, whether it's a Friends of the Market crew, whether it's the Farmers Market Commission is looking at sponsorship. And if we go into sponsorship, $3,600 of fees to musicians could be sponsored. You know, some things could be sponsored. So we'll continually keep looking at other alternatives.
Well,
Yeah.
that's certainly, if I may, a better answer than I get from some bus people, and I'm not looking at Wayne at all, that public transit must be subsidized. You cannot get it to zero. I'm beginning to believe that, but on the other hand, I appreciate your answer regarding the market.
Yep. So I'm going to end that there. There's some nice little pictures that follow. And these are your different services and your different departments. I just lined them out for you in case. I don't want you to forget what everybody else does. For the art department does the bulk of it, but I listed administration there, and even Lori Lewis is here. She does some notaries. She answers the phone. They assist with press releases when DJ is not available. there's a lot of different coordination with different departments in the city to put on the market.
You
So-
had something you wanted to mention? Come on up here if you want to ask a question or.
Yes, I will. This one?
And what was your name again, sir, so they got it for the record?
Bob Hassel, Kendrick, Idaho.
Thank you, Bob.
I do a little vending, and I also work with one of the other produce vendors in concert with them, growing some of the stuff, and we sell at the farmer's market, and have been for, he's been here for 37 or 38 years now, I think, something like that.
Mr. Hagan.
Mr. Hagan, yes. Let's take a look at that deficit of 24.5 there. One thing I would like to take a look at is the fact, or bring up to mention, is the fact that even though I'm from Kendrick and he's from Clarkston, and basically we come up here and we take money, quote, out of the community, we also spend a lot of money in this community. All right? When we had to buy a new engine for a piece of equipment that we have to use in the orchard, it was $750 spent at Pappy Machinery. We spend a lot of money, or at least I do, on groceries and gas and other things here in Moscow. Even though I can go to Lewiston or I come here and I spend a lot of money here. We also buy a lot of parts and things for some of the other farm machinery. Some of our chemicals come from up in this area. So that $24,000 deficit, while it's glaring and you want to get it down to zero, is not money that it's money that is partially reimbursed by the shopping that we as vendors do in this community. And I know other vendors are also, after the market's over, they're spending money before they go home in this community. So it's not, admittedly, I can see that you want to get it down to zero. I can understand your reasoning for it because you don't want to have to subsidize something like this. But this is not a total negative cost to the city of Moscow in terms of there is money generated by the vendors in this community, and it's also spent by the vendors in this community. All right? And that would not occur if there were no farmers market. I mean, we would, in some cases, we would have reason to come here. In a lot of cases, we would not. Taking a look at another point, I do want to thank Mr. Steed for his push to get the signs up for the banners at the end of the streets. This is something I mentioned a 3 years ago based on experience that I've had in managing markets down in Kendrick. And in other words, the reason you need those banners at the edge of the town is so that you can grab a lot of out-of-town money. And as a vendor, I spend a lot of time talking with the people that come into the market. And we have local people that come week after week, but we also have people from out of town. Specifically, when you take a look at it, we get a lot of business over from the west side, the Seattle area. You get a football game in this area during the fall, and you will pick up a lot of people from that area coming over here to a WSU football game, and they'll come over to the farmers market. Those are efforts that I would like to see you continue because that is new money coming into the community. And since we have a very good market and very good product here, they go home with a very positive attitude towards this market and towards the product that we are producing for them. And they also tell their neighbors, because we've had people sit there say, oh yeah, so-and-so was over here a couple weeks ago and they said I had to come here to buy this and this from you guys because of that, And it said they're from the west side. So any efforts, and KQQQ Radio over in Pullman does this probably the best, so admittedly they only do it in the morning, that can be directed towards picking up people that said they're coming over from the west side, especially into the WSU football games, to let them know that farmers market's going on Saturday might benefit the merchants and businesses of Moscow a lot more than you might think. As I said, that is, we've also had a lot of people, they come from the south and like Colorado, we get a lot of people from that area and things like that coming up through and traveling through. So the banners have been great. I'm glad to see them. They're doing exactly what I was hoping for. The one thing you might want to take a look at is trying to get probably better parking so we can get those people off the street and into the market quicker, so we can get them to spend more money. We don't want to make it difficult for them to spend their money in Moscow. So if you can possibly find some way to take care of a parking problem or make it more friendly, whatever, I don't know. And I don't have any ideas on that, quite honestly. If you press me on, I'll see if I can't come up with something at a later date, but right this second
I think we can
cannot.
probably figure that out, Bob.
Okay. It's your city after all.
Yep, that's right.
But I do want to point out is that, again, you're running a $24,000 deficit, and a lot of that money, a good portion of it, I believe, is being covered by money spent by the vendors for various products and services within your city.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Kathleen, Walter.
Kathleen, to follow up on the comment, do you off the top of your head remember what the economic benefit of the market is, exclusive of what's spent in the market? In other words, the other spending in Moscow that can be attributed to the market?
Around neighboring businesses. Yeah, we had that. I didn't put that in this report.
I was thinking you had the number from some surveys.
You do have the number from well, you were a part of the seed study and the need study, and it's in there. And it's, it's like,
And I have, in your metrics, there's
Yeah.
one here. Average total per shopper is right around $30. And average dollars spent at neighboring businesses
yeah.
is another $18.50. So per person at the market.
About half again?
Half again as much goes to local business. So I
And-
think that they see a good
Gary?
benefit.
One of the things that we've been looking at as well is to have an economic assessment done on the farmers market to determine the economic impact. With that many people in downtown Moscow once a week for 26 weeks, it isn't just the neighboring businesses that gain from that. The people who eat breakfast at the Breakfast Club, they may be shopping at Winco for the things they can't get at the farmers market, buying gasoline, things like that. So there are metrics for doing that, and we have some ideas about who we can hire to maybe do that assessment for us. So the council has some idea of the economic impact of the market.
And again, this was just people that reported in a survey, and it wasn't necessarily everybody, but
Yep.
you had to average it among.
Yeah, and we
Yes,
looked
okay.
at our previous rapid market assessments with the University of Idaho Extension, and then we looked at our need and our seed studies that we did, and then we just kind of averaged it out. The other reason we did these metrics numbers that I gave you is because we'll be using those for a future grant, and that's what the USDA is tracking across the United States. So we just looked at the questions that they asked and realized we had a lot of the answers. So we just plugged them in. And it's just a baseline for next year.
Build on. Other questions for Kathleen? That was a wonderful report, Kathleen, and
Welcome.
I like those street banners. I think they're absolutely terrific, and I think they do drive things. And, whether it be somebody that, let's say somebody does go to one of the games, whether it be Wazoo or Idaho, is very interestingly, people from out of town come and stay with other people they know of, and that's one of the things that they sure could do. Come down at 8 o'clock in the morning, go to the market for a few hours, have some fun,
Yep.
and then go on about. So I think there's a very direct correlation, just what Bob from Kendrick had told us. I think that it is powerful for us, and it's pretty neat that we do have the #1 farmers market in the state of Idaho. It's great. Thanks for the terrific report.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, we'll move on to the next thing, and talking about reports, well, we'll go into those. Dan, we'll start with you.
Admin committee, pretty much everything was covered. A lot of it through the consent agenda, and we had the only two real items from our committee got to the main agenda, so see what Public Works can do next time around.
Okay,
And that's all I've got, no other reports. Thank you.
Walter?
Mayor, the only thing that I have on my list since the last council meeting was attending the Association of Idaho Cities Legislative Day down in Boise, and I'm sure either yourself or Gary, who were also there, would probably want to do the report on that, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. Wayne?
Public Works and Finance, we covered over in the consent agenda, everything that we did there. We did have a couple of reports. One was a pilot program on a wastewater treatment plant, which had to do with Phase 5 temperature treatment. And the study is being done if cooling tower or wetlands is an option, if either one of those will work. And it looks like both ideas are viable. Still in the study process on that. And then Les McDonald also gave a report on downtown signage, which is coming up. And it was a pretty basic report, it's still in the works. And then, let's see, on the 22nd, Historical Preservation Commission met, and they are the finalization of the new boundaries for the Fort Russell District are being worked on, and they should be decided on by their February meeting. And then a subcommittee is meeting and looking at what houses meet the criteria for being part of the district. This is kind of an interesting concept because through the grant process that they utilized in hiring these folks that came in and looked at Fort Russell District and what houses would comply and which ones wouldn't comply, all these houses have had some kind of work done on them over the years. They were built in 1905, for instance, and they've been remodeled, whether they had a porch put on or whether they had new windows put on or what type of roof was put on it or dormers were put on it. And the question is, do they then comply with, in regards of being part of a historical preservation unit? And so the Historical Preservation Commission, all the commission members divided themselves up, and each one took his particular blocks within the neighborhoods to look at all the houses that were looked at. And I think we're going to find some pretty good opinions by our commission as to what houses would be in compliance. So I thought that was pretty interesting. The other thing, remember, is that the Idaho Heritage Conference is on track for this September, and it'll be held here in Moscow. They're expecting 150, 200 people on that. And the Farmers Market Commission met on the 14th, and fairly straightforward on that. They had the elections. Aaron Carroll was reelected chair of the commission, and Gina Trucio was assistant chair, and they're continuing their discussion on possible changes for the upcoming farmers market season. And as you all know, these will be coming to us the second meeting in February if everything is on track. And then on the 18th, Blues Knowledge Corridor met, had election of officers there. Co-chairs, once again, Marie Domboski and Robin Olgren. They'll continue in their position. I was lucky. I think I went to the restroom. When I came back, I found out I was elected chair of the Entrepreneur Award Committee. Interesting. You disappear, what happens? But they're moving along. There's an extended discussion on a future nonprofit business showcase and how to show the economic impact of the various nonprofits within the area. So that's what I had.
Okay, Jim.
Last Thursday, I went to the Clearwater Resource Conservation and Development Council in Lewiston, and Bob Tippett, who's a Nez Perce County Commissioner, was elected president again for this year. And the group approved the Clearwater Youth Conservation Corps again for this summer as a major project, and they will be handling the payroll for that organization this year. So there was some discussion about workman's comp and how that we would have to comply with that, and there was some concern about director's liability. So Drew is looking into that, and we'll report on that at the next meeting. And that was about the extent of the business at that organization.
John?
Planning and zoning did not meet for lack of a quorum, and I gave a report last week on the Human Rights Commission, and the Urban Renewal Agency is waiting for hopefully 3 requests for proposals that we might look at in consideration of our property down on the corner of 6th and Jackson. And we have yet to receive those, but when we do, we'll go through them. And other than that, I don't have anything.
Okay. On the 26th, I attended an airport board meeting, and it was decided to have Mead and Hunt as our engineering. The consulting firm is going to handle the airport runway project that will be coming up for the realignment. And as Walter had mentioned, AIC, Walter, one of the counselors, was there, as well as John Weber and Art Betke. The 3 of them were all there. I had a board meeting because I'm on the board of District 2 for AIC, and some of the things that was discussed was education, local option tax, transportation bill, and electronic record keeping. It's kind of interesting on this electronic record keeping, the issue for some cities that have got piles of paperwork, but they don't have anywhere to put it. And some of this stuff they've got to keep forever, which is kind of interesting. And it seems to me like in this digital age that everything should be put on digitally, and you can go back and pull it up and print a hard copy, it seemed to me like. But that being said, some of these things I guess you can't ever get rid of. So maybe Gary, when it comes his turn, he can talk a little bit about that. On the 20th, that was the 28th. On the 29th, we actually met with legislators and heard some of the things from the legislators. And one good thing, a bright spot for the state of Idaho, it kind of is warming, is education. It seems like they're going to take much more of an approach on that this year than they have in past years, and so I'm kind of excited about that. And with us having the University of Idaho here, local option tax, we just need to keep talking about it. And it was kind of interesting. There was a professor from Boise State University, Dr. Weatherby, who was in the legislature back in 1973, and he proposed it then. So they've been working on this for 42 years, and my God, that would drive me absolutely insane. I mean, I can't see why we can't figure something out within 42 years, but we got to keep chipping away on it and make it happen.
42 years, they've been
God.
saying no. Huh?
Yep, 42 years, and they didn't say no down there, but they clearly didn't say yes. So we're going to find out by the end of the legislature on March the 20th. Yes, it's still in the works. But anyway, there you have it. And then next week I will be going down there again with the chamber, with Gina Terusha, Paul Kimball, Earl Bennett, myself, Gary. And so I'm missing somebody. Maybe you can.
Greg Bailey.
Yeah, Greg Bailey. So we're going to get a chance to talk to Department of Commerce, Education Department, Transportation, and the Labor Department, as well as meeting with Brad Little, our Lieutenant Governor. With that, Gary, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, as the mayor indicated, we did attend the legislature in Boise. Some things are milling around down there. One of the things the mayor talked about was local option sales tax, which doesn't appear like it's got a lot of traction. However, there is a movement to move ahead with some increased transportation funding. Potential increase in gasoline tax. Nobody knows what that will look like at this point, but they have some key people working on it and sponsoring some legislation, at least discussing sponsoring some legislation. So some other states surrounding us are starting to look at that as well. Most notably, Utah has been talking about raising their gasoline tax as well. Price of gas is low. I guess it's time, if you're going to increase taxes, it seems like the time to do so. One thing the legislature did recognize, at least the leadership that we talked to, was that they see the declining infrastructure and the obvious need that we have to put some more money into our infrastructure. And they discussed that Michigan, which is a state where the Director of Transportation, Brian Ness, came from, was back there at the time that they reached their tipping point and got so deteriorated that they just couldn't keep up with it no matter how much money they threw at it. So Idaho's trying, at least talking about trying to make sure that doesn't happen here. As John indicated, there are 3 requests or responses to requests for proposals on the 6th and Jackson property being looked at by an assessment team or a review team who will essentially go through them and assess them and give them to the Urban Renewal Agency later this month. So that's exciting. Might see something on that property. So that's what's going on. Oh, I wanted to update you on strategic planning. We are setting a meeting likely the first week of March. I'll be contacting you to get those dates from you for John Luthi, our consultant, to come up, meet with the council to talk about the issue statements that have been developed so that we can utilize those in preparing this year's budget. So that's what's going on.
Wayne.
One other thing that I would mention, Gary, you talked about ITD and transportation funding is, as you guys have heard me talk about in the past, is the very complicated process for public transportation to receive their 5311 federal funds, which trickles down through the state, and the proportion of numbers that the state takes that districts don't get for public transportation. And the biggest issue was whether mobility management, which is our CTAI, was going to be funded and where that money was going to come from. Therefore, they put together a task force, of which Jenny Ford, our executive director, was part of that task force. And they had 3 meetings in Boise. I spoke with Jenny last week, and they had the 3rd meeting. She came back feeling pretty good that the state is finally coming together with a little bit better streamlined process, a little bit better idea of how this money is going to be apportioned. And there is, and I'll just say this quickly and softly, a possibility that we might be able to have enough funding coming through in 2016 that we can go to a third route. We know right now that we're capped out on the 2 routes that we have. You can only reach so much population, and only so much population is going to use public transportation. If we can get some additional funding, we can do an enhanced route, or we can do a third route, which I think that could probably conceivably give us another 50 to 70,000 riders annually. So I think that there's some bright spots there on funding, particularly as long as we continue to receive our local support, which is used as matching money, by the way, for those 5311 funds.
Jim, you had your hand up.
I wanted to ask Gary about the legislation to raise gas tax. Is that being proposed with the idea that the increase in tax would be targeted to some specific project like renewable resource subsidy or infrastructure repair or something like that?
I've not seen it, Jim, but my understanding is that it will go toward road projects. There will be maybe some other pieces parsed out of that, but I've not seen the legislation, so I can't speak to that. But we'll be watching for it, and when we get it, we'll send it on for the council to review.
One of the comments, Jim, down there was they realize that we've got a lot of bridges in the state that need to be replaced or fixed or updated, as well as roads. And it's a nationwide concern as well. I mean, it's a big problem in America. So they know the time is ticking, just like Gary said. The state of Michigan's struggling with the issues they're having, and we don't want to be in Idaho that same way. And hopefully we'll be getting that fixed, so we'll see. Okay, anything else before?
Just to comment on that, from what I understood from leadership was they're not just looking at the possibility of raising fuel taxes. They want to broaden it to registration fees, other types of automotive-related items to be taxed additionally. But on the expense side, I believe their primary interest is in maintenance, whether it's repair or rebuild or something like that is what they're trying to figure out how to get dollars to do. But it's the legislature, so who knows what's going to happen.
We will know in March.
Yep.
If we're lucky. If we're lucky. I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, seeing as there's no other business to come before this council, I move for adjournment.
Second.
Okay, motion made by Wayne, seconded by Dan. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned at 7:58, folks. Thank you.